Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and we do watercolor tutorials, a new one every week. And this week we are doing carrots. Aww. And this is April, for April. We're not filming it in April. So as you can see, I'm still, can they see that?
Well, yes.
Still got a baby in me, so hopefully this baby is out by the time this tutorial is released. Okay. We are going to do this project in 5 steps. So steps 1 through 3, we are going to be painting what you might think is the carrot portion. It is actually called taproot. Taproot. This part is called the taproot. The entire thing is the carrot. This is the taproot, okay? I arbitrarily just chose 3 steps. It felt right. There's 5 carrots, so I guess it could have been 5 steps or 1 step. So 3 felt like a good medium.
Yeah, that's a good medium.
Thank you.
Spot.
Step 4, we're going to be doing the stems and the leaf. Step 5, we are going to be doing the details, which are also called, look at how good me and Keenan are now. Lateral roots, which is like the little hairs. If you have any hairs coming off, you can.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
The sides are the lateral root scars.
Correct.
So that's what these guys are.
Yes.
Okay. Look at that.
The first project we've ever researched.
Go ahead and Google that and see if that's right. What if it's not? They're like, that was a totally wrong
information.
Wouldn't be the first time. Okay, we're using 2 paintbrushes for this project, a Princeton Heritage Series round 6 and a round 2. These are the brushes that we use for most of our tutorials, so if you're just starting with us, I highly suggest you getting these brushes because we paint just about everything with them. And we are using 5 colors in this project. So the first color is burnt orange. The second color is deep yellow. The third color is Tahoe blue. The fourth color is amethyst. And the 5th color is fuchsia. Wait. Yes, fuchsia. Let me make sure. Fuchsia. Okay, so we are going to do our oath, do our warm-ups, and get into the project. If you want to skip that part, you're welcome to. SJ puts a little timestamp where you can skip right to where we start painting because she's awesome. And yeah. Okay, so if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Oh, I was like fighting it, and then I'm like, oh, let's go for it. Okay, so we're just gonna go over 2 things today. This project is super fun because as you can see, these carrots, the taproot part touch each other, which means we have a lot of color bleeding going on, which I think is really cool. So I'll show you guys how to do that. And then we're gonna practice just our thin lines for the stems and the leaves. So let's start with our thin lines. I'm gonna use my round 2. I'm going to get it wet. Actually hit the bristles off the side of the cup to get rid of that excess water. I'm gonna pick up some paint. Doesn't matter, we're just doing warm-ups, so it can be any color. Also, I'm reusing this sheet. This is technically the back. This was a project I used for something else, I don't know, but you can use the back of your watercolor sheets for like practice and warm up. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, grab some color, and then when you do thin lines, you want to do a vertical hold, which means your paintbrush is just about straight up and down, and you want to do really light pressure. For me, it's easier to do long, thin lines if I'm going from left to right, but there's no right or wrong way. Sometimes people feel more comfortable going right to left. Sometimes people feel more comfortable going vertical instead of horizontal. It doesn't matter. You can just always turn your paper whatever way you feel more comfortable. So just play with it and see what feels good. So vertical hold, light pressure, and long, thin lines. So I'm like barely grazing my paintbrush to the paper. You'll see that sometimes it skips because we're like doing such light pressure. That's not a big deal. I leave the skips in there because going back in to try and like straighten them after they skipped is hard, okay? The other thing I want you to notice, since these stems are a little bit longer, is I don't want you to plant your wrist when you're doing this. If you plant your wrist, you're really limited in how long you can go because we're limited by our wrist movement. But you can rest your wrist on the table, just don't put all of your weight on your wrist. So if I'm like letting my wrist rest, but I'm moving from my elbow or my shoulder, I can go as long as I need to go. Okay. Also, you might think that it might be better for you to go really slow. Sometimes it's not. Because if you're going really slow, like usually it's harder to keep like a lighter pressure going slow, or your lines start to get a little bit shaky. So just on your more wet paper, just be like, you know, watcha! You know, as fast as you can. Watcha!
That's a samurai sound.
I am a samurai with a paintbrush.
A brush samurai.
Yeah.
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 Nice.
Nice. Also, if you're getting this rough texture that I'm getting right here, that's telling me I don't have enough water on my brush. So just get a little bit more water. What?
You're a brush samurai that lives by a code.
Yes, I am. All right, one more warm up and then we're gonna start the project. So wet on wet is one of the best techniques because you get some super funky textures and a lot of fun color and blooms and all of this stuff, okay? So we're gonna practice that, like touching the different colors and letting those bleed. So I'm gonna grab my round 6, get it wet, pick up some color, it doesn't matter what color. So I'm just gonna use yellow, and then you wanna work fairly quickly. I'm gonna grab some more water, and using just water, I'm gonna touch that yellow and kind of help the yellow move and bleed, and then go for a different color. Let's pick up some fuchsia and let that touch our water and just let that move. See how that's just gonna move on its own? It's so beautiful. And then you can do that with just water. Maybe grab some orange now. Whoa, see that orange just take over?
Pop.
Okay, so this is the same concept that we will be using for our carrots, where we're gonna make our carrots, paint it, and then right next to it, do the next carrot and let these colors bleed. Look how the orange made it all the way into the yellow. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
So cool. Okay, and the next thing that I want you guys to practice too is, this is wet on wet. Like, I guess I feel like this would be considered wet on wet. Yeah. Because you're touching one wet surface with another wet surface. Another thing to add more textures is you can drop in water drops. Okay, and you'll see that once you drop in water, it moves that pigment. Or you can drop in color. So let's say you want to drop in some orange on here. Now, this has dried for a little bit, so that orange didn't spread very well. So let's see if we can, if I do a yellow, and I grab some orange, it's spreading a little bit better. So you can see here in my reference photo that I have a lot of fun textures, and that's from these colors bleeding together, that's from me dropping in water, and that's from me dropping in color. So really embrace these funky marks that you're going to get because it's cool.
And satisfying.
And it's what the cool kids are doing. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say something else, but I couldn't form this response.
Thinking and talking is hard, I get it.
It is hard, I know.
Okay, let's get started. Gosh, I love how that orange turned out with that pink and yellow.
The wet on wet technique is my favorite technique.
It's the best. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this vertically because these carrots are long and skinny. But if you're painting this for decor and it looks better horizontal, you can totally just turn your paper horizontal. You just have to make your carrots smaller, and I would probably do more on the paper. But you guys get to choose that. Okay. Okay. So for this first carrot shape, I'm going to paint it using just water and then dropping in my color. Now remember, you do have to work fairly quickly for this technique to be as effective as it can be. So if I'm working very fast, that is the reason why I'm doing that. It takes a while to get comfortable working fast, so don't be mad at yourself if you're not quite there. And also, don't be mad at me because I'm just trying to show you how to do it. And number 3, challenge yourself to work faster than you usually do. And be okay if you mess up, or be okay with it turning out however it's going to turn out. But there's something really wonderful about letting go of control in that sense, when you're just like, I'm just going to work very quickly and I'm not going to like sit and focus on every tiny little thing, because I think you just have like not as high of expectation of it turning out amazing if you're okay with it working fast. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's really freeing. Okay, so 6. My water is orange, but I'm painting orangey carrots, so it's fine. Okay. Or if you want to rinse your water and get totally clean water, you can.
It actually kind of looks like apple juice.
It does. It kind of looks like apple cider because I have like floaties in there.
Gross.
Okay. Let's do this. So carrots, of course, you guys have seen carrots. They are all different shapes and sizes. They're kind of funky, but usually they're a little bit wider. They're wider on the top and then narrow out as they get down to that lateral root.
Huh? Nice.
Thank you.
I think you need taproot.
No, Keenan, the lateral root is the tiny parts that come off the bottom. The entire thing is taproot.
Lateral means this.
No, you told me.
The little hairs that come off the side.
The little hairs, I thought the little hairs that came off the sides on the bottoms were lateral roots, and then the dark lines were lateral root scars.
Maybe they're all lateral roots.
Are there hairs that come out of the side of carrots?
They're the little hair thing. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I know
when
there's
you
little
pull
hairs
them
on
out
the
of
bottom.
ground. Yeah, but sometimes they have them up the side.
Do they?
That's what the diagram of the carrot anatomy
Listen,
said.
I've never grown a carrot or pulled it out from the dirt. So maybe I just don't know.
Listen, we're calling them lateral roots.
Okay.
We'll go with your term.
Dang it, I was so confident,
One
and
of
now
them-
I'm questioning everything.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
One of them had 45 different names for a carrot.
Ooh.
So it can't be, there's no way we can all be right.
Well, these are heirloom carrots. That's why they're colored like this. Have you seen those? They're beautiful.
No, I've not. I'll Google them.
They're like purpley, and they're basically like this. You don't need to Google them. I got a picture right here for you. All right. Focusing, using just water, grabbing my 6. I'm going to make a carrot shape. You might not be able to see what I'm doing because I'm doing just water. And you might not be able to see what you're doing because it's kind of hard to see just water on a white paper. But just do the best you can. I just kind of look at it from the side because then you can just see the water angle. Okay? And then I'm going to grab yellow, and I'm just going to start dropping yellow in there. And once you drop in the color, some of it's going to spread really good on its own and some of it's not. So you just got to be like, come on, little fella. Let's get in this. And then once you drop in color, you can shape it as you need to shape it. So if I'm like, I actually want it to be a little bit skinnier at the bottom, and this is a little too perfect, so I'm going to make it a little bit funky. Whoa, that got really funky. That's okay. Like so. And then if you want to drop a little bit of orange in there too, you can. Now I'm not going to do too much orange because I want this one to be mostly yellow, but just a little fun hints here and there are fun.
Heirloom carrots are
Whoa.
which is a real word. Heirloom carrots are amazing.
Aren't they beautiful?
Yes.
Yeah, so colorful. Okay, there's my first carrot, and I'm going to work fairly quickly moving on to my second carrot because I want these colors to be able to bleed into each other. So just using water. And then I like to change the shapes of my carrots a little bit, like adjust the heights so they're not all the same. But that is a personal preference and an aesthetic choice. So if you want to make yours all the same, go for it. Okay, so here's my water. I see some yellow already bleeding in there, which is beautiful. And now I'm going to mix some of my fuchsia and my amethyst together. And then if you want to like take that purple down a notch, if it's too vibrant, you can mix a little bit of yellow in there, and that's going to give it like this really gorgeous brown purple. And then you can start putting that in there. Or maybe you just really like color and you're like, I want this to be a bright purple. Look at that. Look at those blooms. And then to really make it seem vibrant, I mixed my purple, and I'm also going to drop in just some fuchsia in the center to get like a really bright pink. Then maybe some water drops in there too. I love how that yellow is bleeding and that purple's bleeding into that. It's beautiful. We love it. And then I like the idea of like just making some edges just a little bit darker. So I mixed a little bit of Tahoe blue in there with my purple. Yes, yes. Look at all that texture. So good.
It's making me tired.
So tired? Why?
Watching the water and the paint color, like the mix and move around on its own, is mesmerizing.
Oh.
I've just got it zoomed in over here.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our third carrot. Again, we're going to repeat that same process. So using just water.
It's like watching a campfire.
Yeah, or like a lava lamp.
Yeah. I always wanted a lava lamp.
I had a lava lamp and I thought it was so cool, you know.
It is so cool.
Okay, so I got it nice and wet. And this one I'm going to do mostly burnt orange. So grab my orange, drop it in, and look at that baby go. Yes. And it's okay to leave like some white marks too. You don't have to like, once you drop it in, you don't want to like work this back and forth so much that you lose the different textures that you got by dropping it in. You can work it a little bit to fill the space, but I don't want to take my paintbrush and just go back and forth across this because then I'll lose all that fun texture that I got with my wet on wet technique. Okay, and then if you want to, you can drop a little bit of yellow in here. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my next carrot, again, using just water. And you can have them connect at different spots. For example, in my reference here, this one's kind of on the side, this one connected at the top, this one's connecting on the side again. So just kind of wherever it makes sense for your carrot. You can kind of also make your carrot slightly bend a little bit so it is touching that other one. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And I kind of want that pink to bleed into that orange a little bit. Okay, so next carrot. This one I'm going to make a little bit taller, and I'm going to say something, and I should have said this in the beginning, so I'm really sorry. But you want to make sure you leave room for your leaves and your stems. So if you're doing your carrots and your top of your carrots are kind of up here, then maybe you just have carrots with no stems, which is just fine. So try and do your carrots closer to the bottom of your paper to leave room for stems. I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier.
What if you were to do a sliced carrot?
What do you mean?
Like, what if one of the carrots is adjacent to the other carrots and it has already started to be chopped up to be put in a stew?
Ooh, that would be cool.
That would be cool.
The nice thing about carrots chopped up too is you can do like that because they have like a white ring.
Yeah.
So that would be a really fun wet on wet
that'd be cool.
technique. Okay. Okay, so this one I'm going to do mostly yellow, but then I'm going to introduce a little bit of green to it because I want color variation within this. And why not? You know what I mean? But don't go too crazy with the green. Like, just do little hints. So I'm going to mix a tiny bit of my Tahoe blue with my deep yellow here. And then if you want to tone down the brightness of the green, if you're like, man, that green is just too vibrant, you can add a little bit of fuchsia or a little bit of burnt orange. And it's going to make that green a little bit browner. And we're going to drop it in here. And I'm just doing little hints, not like the entire thing green, just like a little bit here and there. You can also do water, droplets. And if you want to do a little bit of orange in there too, you can. Really, really just have fun with it. Play with the different colors, different textures. Okay, that looks pretty cool. All right, and now we're moving on to our last one. Again, using just water. I'm going to connect these guys. This one's going to be a little bit thicker and stubbier. Sorry, my shape got a little bit wonky. Okay, and then I'm going to use orange again. And also some fuchsia in there, so it's like a pink orange. And I'm just going to reshape it a little bit because the shape got a little bit wonky. And I have to tell you, I'm really excited about this project because painting carrots is what made me fall in love with liquid watercolors. And I explained this in the video, if you ever watched on our website, the difference, like why I like Dr. P.H. Martin inks or why I like liquid watercolors like Dandelion paints. I ordered some because there's an illustrator that I follow that I love her work, and she shared what paints she used, and they were liquid watercolors. So I ordered a set, and the very first thing I painted was a carrot. And I was so in love with the vibrancy of the color that I just like could not stop painting. Like, that is what kickstarted my entire illustration and freelancing career, which led to this, was like I painted a carrot and I was like, look at this orange.
Dang, that's cool.
And I was just like, and then I painted like radishes and like all the vegetables I can think of that were colorful because the color was so just nothing like I've ever seen before. And I was just like, these are the best. Like, I'm just like, I'm gonna paint everything. And then I'm gonna sell it.
Give me a garden to paint.
So it was just really fun to to experience that. And I will say that not everybody is going to have the same reactions to materials. Something is going to speak differently to you than what it does to me, and that is okay. So maybe you're the type of person that's like, yeah, colors are cool, but they're like way so vibrant that like that's too much. That's just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So maybe then like pigment-based paints are where you want to go, and maybe you're more about texture, where Daniel Smith has wonderful, like a really wonderful, what's the word I'm looking for? Grainy texture. Like the paints separate and they actually leave like a granular texture on the painting, and it's beautiful. And you get textures that way. So there's different ways, but I was just really excited to show you guys what got me started on this entire thing, which was a carrot. Painting a carrot.
That's cool.
Okay, that was steps 1 through 3. So
Check.
check. Good job. You can make adjustments now. The only thing that I want you guys to keep in mind is with the wet on wet technique, if your carrot has dried, it's not going to react the same way if I try and drop something in now. That doesn't mean that you can't do anything. That just means you have to re-wet the area. Now, a little hint is once something dries and you re-wet it, you'll get blooms, because blooms are all about when things dry at different times. And so if I were to go in to my purple right here and re-wet this area, wherever I re-wet it, I'm going to have a harsh bloom line here, which I don't think is a bad thing. So sometimes I do that on purpose. But I just want you guys to keep that in mind as you're painting, in case you start to get frustrated. Don't get frustrated at the paints. They're just doing what they're supposed to do. Okay. So now we are going to do our stems and our leaves. You can see that my paper here is starting to buckle a little bit because I used so much water, because we did a lot of wet on wet technique here. What you can do is you can always tape your paper down before you start, all 4 sides using painter's tape or washi tape to kind of keep it flat.
Pro tip.
Pro tip. But I don't mind if my papers warp a little bit, because if I'm going to frame it, then the glass is going to straighten it out anyway. So I usually don't get really worked up about slightly warped paper.
Yeah, you don't get bent out of shape about it.
I don't. But if it really bothers you, that's totally understandable. You would just want to go for a heavier weight paper. That's 100% cotton.
Did you catch my pun?
Bent out of shape. No, I didn't. Katie, that was so good. I'm a fool for not recognizing it. It was so good. Good job. I was wondering, I'm like, wow, Keaton, that's a really aggressive way to describe how people care about their paper. Like, I get it. It's good. Okay, so now we're going to do our stems and leaves. So I'm going to switch to my 2 because we're going to do thinner lines, and I'm going to mix some green. So I'm going to pull some Tahoe blue. I'm going to pull some deep yellow. Now, depending on how much yellow you have in there will make the green more yellowy green, or how much blue will make it a cooler green, which is like a bluer green. You guys can decide. I like to do a few different greens because it's my life. You know what I mean? You guys can do whatever you want. Bon Jovi and Gwen Stefani. Yes. We've had this conversation. And if you want to tone down the vibrancy of the green, you can add a little bit of burnt orange or a little bit of fuchsia to make it more brown. Okay, so I got my greens. I have a few different here. And then for me, I'm going to turn my paper a little bit because it's easier for me to do thin lines horizontally. And I'm just going to start putting my stems in. So I'm just going to do a few stems coming out. There's really no rhyme or reason. It's just kind of like a few thin lines. Maybe switch up my green a little bit. It's okay if they run in. Ooh, that was a thick one. That's okay. And this top part might be wet to where either the green will bleed into the carrot or the color of the carrot will bleed into the green. I think that that's also a really cool accidental art element, so I don't mind when that happens. Most of these are already dried, so that won't happen to them. But if yours are still wet, then that might happen, and just embrace it. So I'm kind of all having them originate from a single point. You can have some going off this way. You can have some going off this way. These can get a little bit messy because the leaves and the stems on carrots are actually pretty big and bushy. I guess it depends on the carrot too. I've seen both. So just kind of play with it. Whatever you do is not going to be wrong, which I think is really wonderful. This one I'm going to have coming out that way. Okay. So I did my stems, and now we're going to do the little leaves coming off, which the leaves on carrots, they kind of remind me of parsley, where we have the main stems and then we have little stems that come off that have leaves on both sides like this. So I'm just going to do dots. So this part, don't stress out too much because these aren't super realistic. So I'm not going for realism here. I'm just going for ideas, trying to communicate the different textures. So I'm going to do leaf-like, parsley-like textures coming off these stems. And then another thing I like to do just to make it a little bit more loose is after I put in my leaves like this, I'll just take some water and just kind of mess them up a little bit. So I'm just touching them with water, and that's going to make them kind of blend and bleed a little bit, which I think is really cool. And I'm just going to repeat that across. Again, you guys can play with the different colors of the greens. Get some water in there. Again, these shapes are just kind of funky dashes. I'm not trying to do anything super specific or realistic. If you really want to look at a carrot and their leaves and try and get it a little bit more real, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that.
All you got to do is grab a seed, plant it, and in about 75 days,
In about 75 days,
you'll have a full carrot.
pull that sucker
Yeah.
up,
And you can look at it all you want.
look at it all the time.
Yeah. Until you can't look at it, when it's either bad or you ate it.
And after you do this, you can always go back in and add more stems or leaves. I just kind of want to make it feel a little bit bushy, so that's why I'm adding extra like water and leaves and stems. But again, that choice is up to you guys because you're the artist here. So maybe you're like, I don't know, I really like carrots that have just a tiny bit of leaves. That's what really excites me. Well, then paint that. The shape of these, so I said parsley. I think they remind me of parsley and also like ferns a little bit. You know how ferns like have those edges and then on each one there's like little things that stick out from there?
Yeah.
I think they're kind of like that too.
I see that.
And you can do the same thing that we did with our carrots, where while it's still wet, you can drop in some extra color in some places and just let those kind of blend out and bleed a little bit. I don't know why I did that one, but I did it. It's a random leaf. That's fine. Now the other thing that I'm kind of paying attention to here is also the different heights that I have going on with my leaves and my stems. For me, I like it when most of them are around this height. This is kind of where the bulk of them stop. And then I have a few kind of stragglers kind of coming out different places. Personally, I think that would read a little bit closer to how you would see things in nature. So I'm looking at this, and all of these are kind of stopping a little bit too close. So after I'm done, I'll go in and like do some random flares here and there, just so it's not so even and compact. But if you're looking at like a reference photo that you took and they do all end in the same spot, then you can have it end there. Or if you're looking at a reference photo and they do end in the same spot, you can choose to elongate some of them. Again, that's the amazing thing about art, is you're the creator of the world that you're painting. So you don't have to follow things exactly if you don't want to. If you want to be a little edgy, you know. Keenan gets it.
I get it.
Okay, and just throw some water on there, kind of mess it up. Okay, and now we can do some kind of random long ones. I really like how this kind of curved out that I did earlier. So maybe I'll do something kind of like that over here, like that.
There's one really big and really green leaf in there that's just my favorite.
This guy?
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere.
Do you know what's funny though is like when I did that, I was like, oh shoot, what was I thinking? And then now you can't really tell. So don't get hung up on those little mistakes that you make. Just move on quickly. And most of the time you won't even be able to notice it in a bit. It's so much better just to let those things go, because what ends up happening is like sometimes, like let's say I made that leaf and then I was like freak out, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do more of those leaves for that leaf to make sense all over my paper, or I need to do a bigger leaf to cover that leaf, and then it actually ends up accentuating, is that the right word? Yep. Accentuating the thing more than if you were just to move on as if it never happened. So sometimes there are great tools that we can use to help cover up mistakes, but also sometimes messing with them makes them more obvious. So keep that in mind, my friends. Okay, and I feel like I need some like leaves on one of these. Okay, oh, that's still so even to me. Maybe I'm just looking at it too hard. Oh, it's not that bad. Okay. Now, the other thing that I'm starting to notice here, and I just want to like mention this. This is a 9x12 paper. We put these 9x12s in there on purpose, even though we know 9x12 is not a common frame size. We understand that. But I like to work on 9x12 because it gives myself room to crop images if I need to make the composition better. For example, if this was the final thing, these carrots are too high on this paper. If you look at the space here and then what's left up here, they're not centered, they're pushed way up. So since this is a 9x12 painting, I can cut this about an inch and make it 8 by 10 probably, if I make this skinny, okay? So I always leave myself a little bit of room for freedom of adjusting the composition if I need to. Now, if that's not an option for you, like let's say you trim your paper down and this happens, what you can do for me, like if this was it and like trimming down wasn't an option, I would probably make my carrots a little bit longer, not all of them, but I would probably have a couple of these go to about here. So then it feels not as pushed up and high on the paper. Does that make sense? So I didn't really do this in the reference photo, but I will show you, because carrots do have those like lateral roots that come off. So I can mess with that and I can use that knowledge to my advantage, where I'm like, okay, but sometimes carrots get like so skinny down here.
Yep.
You know, kind of like that. Ooh, I really like how that turned out.
That looks awesome.
So I'm going to do that a couple more times. And now for me, I feel like already it feels better on my sheet of paper compositionally, and it doesn't feel so high up. So let's grab some orange. And notice I'm using my round 2 for this and doing very thin lines. Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah, that feels good. Okay, now for our lateral root scars, there's a couple things that you guys can do. One of them is you can just use this round 2 and then just make kind of some horizontal lines along the edge like so. So if I'm like kind of wherever it kind of curves in, not every single place, but like that's kind of where I was playing with it, and you just do some like dashes along the edge here. Okay. Or if you are part of our subscription box for April, we have a fun bonus item, which is a Micron pen. Okay, and the fun thing about Micron pens and watercolor is you can paint something and then go back in with a black ink pen and do some lines and some illustrations, reshape things. It's a really popular style that's super fun to do. So I didn't do it in the reference photo because this pen doesn't come in the individual kits that we will sell, but if you're a subscriber, you should have this wonderful pen. And then I'll just show you how you can use it. So you can either like outline the carrot, and notice that I'm not perfectly outlining it. It's okay if my black kind of goes around it like so, and then you can use the pen to do the little scars themselves. And you can even use it for the leaves too. So you can do some little round leaf textures. Define some of these a little bit. You don't have to do it a lot. You can even just do like wavy lines. Isn't that fun?
I love that.
Yeah, I love it, I especially love it when you paint loose like this, like on the top parts with the green, and then go in there and just do some kind of darker lines and funky shapes. It just adds this other element that's super interesting. So this is a really fun thing to play with. Some other ideas that you could do, like you could do buildings like this where you do just a colorful wash and then go in with your black and then define the building shape, the windows, the walls, that kind of stuff. You can do this with florals, you can do this with illustrations, you can do this with animals. Sometimes it's really helpful too if you feel like if you painted too loosely that you lost the shape of what you're trying to paint. Just come in with one of these guys and reshape it and you're good. It's all cool. Maybe I'll have that connect. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, that's cool. I'll do this one with, I'll do these 2 with the pen and then these 3 without, so you guys can kind of decide. Now this one I already went in with a darker color and put it in. That's okay. You can just go right over it. Or maybe you leave some of them there. Again, I'm just kind of doing funky little sketches. Be loose with it, have fun. Okay, oh, that looks so cool. All right, so I wonder if these reconstitute. Should we test it?
Yeah, test it.
Okay, so this is a, it's archival ink, Micron pen. This is a size 5, which is a great size. They do different size tips. So if this is too thick and you want to work finer, they have finer tips. Or if you want thicker ones, they have thicker tips as well. And it does not reconstitute, which is great. It's kind of blending a little bit, but not much. That's cool. That means you can do more layers on top after you use it. Very cool. Okay, so for the rest of my carrots here, so you feel free to use this Micron pen as you guys see fit, as you're working your way throughout this box or in your personal work. I hope that you have fun exploring with it because it is a lot of fun. And then for my other carrots, you can also go in and like, for me, I want some edges to be a little bit darker. So you can go back and put those in. And then what I do is after I put them in, I just am going to use water to bleed them out so then it doesn't look so blocky. Okay. Now I have to wait for that to dry. I'll move on to the next carrot and then I'll put in the scars. So on this one, just kind of where you can see that I'm doing some short and some long. I think they stay, I'm trying to picture carrots. I feel like they stay mostly on the edges, but then when it gets thin, because it's so thin, it would make its way across the entire thing. But I think on the top, they kind of stay more on the outside a little.
Like stretch marks.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to do this one. And this is a really light carrot here, and I kind of like how light it is. I think that's going to make the marks show up pretty good. Just try and do the marks within the same color family of whatever the carrot is. So for example, I wouldn't be taking purple onto this yellow. That's too, the values would be too different that it would become distracting maybe. I mean, I guess on the black it's not that distracting, but just let me say things.
I did see a picture of what are those carrots? Heirloom. Heirloom carrot that was purple, but when you sliced into it, it was orange.
Really?
Yeah.
That would be a fun one to paint.
So then the scars were orange.
Yeah.
It was cool.
That's so cool.
It blew my mind.
Actually, that's a great, there's something that I've been wanting to tell you guys that I learned in art school, and this is a great segue to that, which is a lot of the times when we see photos or see things in nature that are super cool, like different colorings like that, we think we want to paint that, right? But to make something like you see in real life is hard enough, and then to try and do it with something that you don't commonly see is really difficult to do. So a lot of times, like the example that I'm thinking of is there was this girl in my painting class where she had this really cool picture where she was standing outside of a convenience store and there was a window, so there was glare, and there was also one of those round like camera things that like have that fish thing. Yeah. So there were a lot of reflections going on, which is a really cool photo. But because you don't see that in nature, like because you're not used to seeing those different reflections all of the time, her painting and her drawing, we could not figure out what was going on at all because it was really difficult for our eyes to adjust because that's not something we see. Does that make sense? So we didn't actually understand what was going on in that painting until we saw the reference photo. And then we were like, oh, I understand what you're trying to make. So, but I completely understand that want to, when you see something exciting that you're like, oh, that could be a really cool painting, which sometimes it can be. But just so you know, if you're trying to do things that you don't see often, and unless you're really like a really good realistic painter, it might not come across as a reference photo. So I just have seen that a couple of times in the Facebook group where people will share photos and they're like, this would make a great painting. A lot of it is like animals in different positions. But if you're not used to seeing that, then it would be really hard to communicate that. Does that make sense? Okay. So I just want to warn you because I just don't want you guys to be like, mad or think that you're bad at art. It's not about that. It's just that our brains like to jump to conclusions like I've talked about. So if you're trying to paint something that our brains can't recognize initially, even in a photograph, it takes a second for us to figure out what's going on. It's really hard to communicate that on a two-dimensional surface painting. I'm so out of breath. That was a lot of talking. I'm sorry. Okay. So I just need to add the scars on this little guy here, and then I'm done. So just a few here. Maybe you can mix a little bit of purple in with your orange if you want it to be nice and dark. And we're done, you guys. We did it. Good job. This was such a fun project. I hope you guys had fun making it and you learned a few different things and that you're being brave and trying things and letting things go because that's how we learn the best, is just when we experiment and have fun. If you painted this with us, I cannot wait to see what yours turned out like. They're all going to be so different because of our wet and wet techniques that we used here, so share it. You can tag us on Instagram at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. We have that Facebook group that I mentioned earlier that's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. Great supportive group. It's very large, but it has lots of different varying skill sets in there, which I think is great for you guys to collaborate and learn from one another. And if you need any of these supplies, including this is your paint water cup, so you don't get confused. You can find them at letsmakeart.com. And that's all I got to say. You guys are great. Bye.